In August of 2026, CNN published a report that should have made headlines everywhere. The Pentagon, the most powerful military institution on Earth, had sent an email to a broad group of military analysts. The message was simple. We are looking for new, creative, and unconventional ways to pressure and punish Iran. Not a strategy, not a directive, an email asking for ideas. 5 months into a war that was supposed to be over quickly, the US military is crowdsourcing its next move. Go back to February 28th. The US and Israel launched what they called Operation Epic Fury, coordinated strikes across Iran targeting military leadership, missile sites, radar installations, and nuclear infrastructure. Within hours, Ali Khamenei was dead. The messaging from Washington was confident. Iran's military capacity had been crippled. The regime was on the verge of collapse. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil supply flows every single day, would reopen within weeks. That was the plan. 3 objectives: regime change, nuclear program destroyed, strait reopened. 5 months later, none of them have been achieved. Iran did not collapse. It closed the Strait of Hormuz instead, using cheap drones, naval mines, and fast attack vessels, and held it. The nuclear program was degraded but not destroyed, and the regime, far from falling, has hardened into a more radical posture than it had before the first bomb dropped. So what happened to the plan? When Operation Epic Fury launched on February 28th, the US military had 2,330 Patriot missile interceptors in the region. These are the missiles used to shoot down Iranian ballistic missiles and drones coming at American bases and assets. By early April, that number was down to just over 1,000. By the end of July, it was around 800. Iran and its allies, Hezbollah, Houthi forces in Yemen, Iraqi militias, were firing back constantly. Every intercept costs a Patriot missile. Every Patriot missile costs roughly $4 million, and they take years to manufacture and replace. It doesn't stop there. Reuters reported that by mid-summer, the US had used up virtually all of its long-range precision missiles, including ATACMS, and had burned through nearly half of its global Tomahawk cruise missile stockpile. CNN reported the overall figure. The US military has consumed nearly 80% of its key missile interceptors. Rebuilding those reserves, according to defense analysts, would take years. This matters more than most people realize. American military doctrine in this region is built entirely around standoff power, hitting targets from a safe distance with precision-guided munitions. That's the doctrine. That's the advantage. When you run out of those munitions, the doctrine stops working. You're left choosing between moving closer, reducing the frequency of strikes, or stepping back. The US has been, quietly, stepping back. Before the war started, the US had between 40,000 and 50,000 soldiers spread across roughly 24 bases and installations across the region: Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. Iran's strategy was never to match American firepower directly. That would be suicidal. Instead, Tehran targeted the bases systematically, methodically, making each one untenable through sustained missile and drone pressure. Not destroying the US military, just pushing it further and further from the battlefield. By July, it had worked. Iran intensified strikes against US facilities in Kuwait and Bahrain to the point where Washington withdrew its forces from both countries. The New York Times reported in March that troops at many remaining bases weren't even operating from those bases anymore. They were working from hotels, civilian port facilities, office spaces, having been effectively evicted by Iranian missile pressure. US Central Command quietly relocated thousands of soldiers to bases in Europe, thousands of kilometers from Iran. When a journalist asked Trump at an August press conference about reports that US soldiers had been expelled from Kuwait and Bahrain, his response was, "I don't want to comment on that." That's a telling answer from someone who opened this war promising destruction at a scale not seen since World War II. Here's something that didn't make many front pages. As Trump was preparing a massive new escalation against Iran, threatening to destroy its electrical grid and oil infrastructure, his own allies called him and told him to stop. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman called Trump personally. Qatar and the UAE made similar representations. The message from all three was the same: don't escalate. This is worth sitting with for a moment. The Gulf monarchies, the countries that depend most on American military protection, the countries that have hosted US bases for decades, were calling Washington and asking it to stand down. The reason is straightforward. Iran still has options it hasn't used. It hasn't targeted desalination plants, the infrastructure that provides more than 90% of the Gulf states' drinking water. It hasn't pushed the Houthis to strike Saudi oil infrastructure at maximum intensity, though attacks have already been damaging. Every American escalation risks triggering an Iranian counter-escalation that the Gulf monarchies, not the continental United States, will absorb. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, they're not on the other side of the world. They're next door to Iran, and they know it. This is the position the US finds itself in. Its own allies are now a brake on its ability to wage the war it started. Every few days, Trump posts something new on Truth Social about Iran. In August, he wrote that the US military was locked and loaded and ready to hit Iran at levels of military terror, strength, and power not seen since World War II. A few days later, he announced that a deal was nearly done, that Iran had agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, that it would all be over soon. Tehran came out the same day and said that was false. This has been the pattern since March. A University of Chicago political scientist documented 5 separate instances where Trump issued an ultimatum, 48 hours or else, and then backed down when the cost of following through became clear. March, 48-hour deadline, backed down. April, threatened to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age, agreed to a ceasefire he later violated. June, same threat, same result. July, announced a probable deal, violated it later. August, locked and loaded, stood down again. The phrase that started circulating to describe this pattern is taco. Trump always chickens out. It's not flattering, but more importantly, it's a signal. When your threats stop being credible, your adversary stops being deterred. Iran has figured this out. Tehran is no longer reacting to Trump's statements. It's simply continuing its strategy and letting Washington exhaust itself. Washington is now fighting at a pace set by Tehran. Iran took the initiative, designed a strategy to exhaust the United States and frighten its Arab allies into pressuring Washington to de-escalate. And it's working. The New York Times went further. In August, it published a piece titled, "In Iran, the US appears headed for a strategic defeat." The editorial board's assessment: Trump's goals remain unmet. The US military is running short on key armaments. Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs are degraded but not destroyed. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively under Iranian control, and Washington is losing credibility both militarily and diplomatically. That's the New York Times, not a fringe outlet, not an Iranian state broadcaster. 5 months in, Operation Epic Fury has produced none of its stated objectives. The regime didn't fall, the street didn't reopen, the nuclear program wasn't destroyed. American troops have been pushed out of 2 countries. The Pentagon is sending emails asking analysts for creative ideas. The question now isn't whether the plan is falling apart. It clearly is. The question is what the US does next, and whether it has the tools left to do anything at all. That's what we're covering next.